Hey everybody, welcome back to me ranking every single unit in Wargame Red Dragon, part 6 of the planes. So yeah, there's a lot of other parts if you haven't seen those. Today we're gonna finish it with Netherlands and Israel, and then we'll move on to the naval tab, and once it is out, we'll do a quote-unquote special episode with just ranking South African units, and if necessary, or if that is the case, if there is going to be a balance patch as well that would affect things significantly, then we probably would re-rank these units as well, if necessary. That said, let's get into it. F-104G is essentially a copy of the Danish one, except that you get 10% ECM for free. Solid availability. Speed, of course, not particularly amazing for hunting planes or killing planes, because most planes you see these days are faster than that, and given that you only have short-range missiles, it's going to be tough to catch them. But for helicopters, and given the fact that you have a very good gun, actually a good deal. So it is certainly one of the better helicopters. Did I put the other one? Yeah, it's the F-104G. I think there might be another one with this name, but it's just solid. It's fine. Block 1, in theory, like a quote-unquote high-end helo hunter, similarly to the Peace Bridge, I think it's called, used by South Korea. Although the Peace Bridge, I'm very certain, has AIM-9Ms as opposed to AIM-9Ls, but nonetheless, both of the planes have the same issue. While they have, like, they're very fast, they have good air detection, they have okay, not amazing ECM, but being a helo hunter, it's fine, you know, and for 90 points, it's fine. And they have a lot of missiles. The problem is you can't only get them off one after the other, right? So only the first 2, maybe 3 missiles really matter. So having 3 additional ones, especially given they're only short range and, you know, essentially mostly anti-helo missiles, not really that great. If you want to use a helo hunter in your Dutch German or in your Dutch or Netherlands deck, I would always go for the F-104G instead. MLU, that's essentially the same thing as the F-16A Block 52. Like, same loadout, same veterancy, same stance. It's the exact same thing. And we also have to adjust this. Just 1 second. Okay. Block 5. Basically a Tornado IDS, but for more points. You have less ECM, slightly better turn radius, and you have a Vulcan, but same loadout, same speed. I think the IDS also has exceptional air detection. Yeah, it is, since it's blocked, I'm just going to, like, you can see the F-16 has less ECM, whereas air detection, lower time over target, slightly better turn radius, a better gun, and other than that, it's the same, but really just, whoops, wrong one, just straight up worse in practice. I think the IDS is in C tier. Again, it's not really, like, utterly worthless, but if you're playing Dutch German and you want an HE bomber, just go for the IDS. But this one, I think this might have to be the same name as the Danish Block 5. It's probably, is it an 8 here? Or it's a Block 15? No, that's a different block. There. Okay. Block 10. 4 ADP looks very, very similar to the Tornado GR1. Now I'm gonna block some of the screen here. But let me just... Same bombs. The Tornado GR1 has 2 additional AIM-9s, 10% extra ECM, slightly worse turn radius, and of course not a Vulcan, but with 10 points more you get more the main thing you get for 10 points more is 10% extra ECM. And given that it's like 120 points versus 130 points with the same availability, I always go for the GR1, but I'm pretty sure the Tornado GR1 is in C tier, so I'm gonna put this in C tier for sure. Even if the GR1 would be in B tier, which I'm very certain it isn't. See, Harriet, there's a tier 1. Yeah. Block 15 OCU is good. It's essentially an F-16A MLU, the Danish one, but instead of 4, you get 2 AIM-120As, but you also cost 15 points less, with the same veterancy options. MLU is significantly better. 2 additional missiles is huge, because in a head-on fight you will get 3 of those off, so getting one, given the fact that you essentially need 2 hits, or you know, have to be very good with, very lucky with the autocannon, to get a kill in one run, getting that at least 1 additional missiles, but in this case 2 additional missiles, huge. That said, it's still a solid anti-tank plane. It's honestly probably still 8 here, because you do have 40% ECM, and you do get 4 of those Mavericks. I would rate the MLU higher. Like, if I had a choice, I would always go for the MLU, but I think the Block 15 is still nice. And in this case, you just really only bring this out for these missiles if the enemy is at like a bomber or something, or like a decent step behind like your ASF or something, you know, so it isn't the first target to get shot at by enemy AA and planes. They can be nice, but it's not nearly as capable, obviously, as the MLU. F-84F, it's a very cheap rocket per plane. Like, ridiculously cheap. 50 points is like the Skyhawk. Not this Skyhawk, this Skyhawk here. It's also 750k mage, which is honestly not too bad, given that it's only 50 points. It has, of course, no ECM and a useless gun, but 750k mage for 50 points, not too bad. And you get 4 down with it, even. NF5A, it's a mediocre cluster plane. With cluster planes, you really want to be fast, because the faster you are, the less time your opponent has to react, right? Because usually, from the way if you see a cluster plane coming in, right, from the angle it's coming in, you can roughly estimate where it's gonna drop those bombs, right? And then you have to quickly react to that to know how to evade, because sometimes your opponent might anticipate you moving a certain way, right? If the opponent sees your tank reversing into safety because it just got damaged, then it might anticipate your tank to be there by the time the cluster bombs dropped, in which case you might want to stop reversing, etc, etc. There's a bit of mind games going on there, but it means that the cluster plane, of course, has to be fast. And I mean, obviously you want all your planes basically to be fast most of the time, especially like bombers, anti-jam planes. Generally you want to be fast, at least if they're like the type of planes where you send them in once, get like 1 payload off, and you're out, right? Something like SU-25T, A-10, different scenario, but like, you know, Gallop, cluster bombers, HE bombers, Kurnass, stuff like that, you want to be fast. But I think with cluster planes it matters even more. And so that loss of speed is really impactful. That said, the payload for 90 points isn't that bad. You also get 3 of them, which is nice, but low ECM and low speed, not so great. The utility that it has in terms of helicopters, certainly nice, but that's not what I would look at. And F5B, it is an acceptable payload, right? I think like my napalm plane rankings are all over the place, but given that it has 5 bombs, it's honestly not too bad. And you get 3 per card, right? And it even has some ECM. I'm gonna be nice here and put it in the seat here. All right, Israel now. Ayit, that is, I believe, the worst seatplane in the game. While compared to the SE7, you do get 2 missiles. The check SE7B, you're even slower. You also have no stealth, and your missile is worse, even though you get 2 of them. That said, it is a seatplane, and a very cheap one at that, but just at low speed. You can do get 30 ECM, which is for 70 points really good. But it is, honestly, I'm only gonna put it in C tier, because I think most of the time you just unless you're playing like a team game or something, and for some reason you can't get the Kurnass, or in a hypothetical scenario where you can't take the Kurnass, it may be worth it, but generally speaking, I think you're better off just not running seed if this was your only choice. Kurnass 2000, solid. While it doesn't have stealth, it's pretty fast. It has 40% ECM. You get 2 of them, And even down with it is gonna be decent because it has one of the better seed missiles. It's the same ones used by the Prowler, so you have not the like maximum range that seed missiles tend to have, like 5,250 is usually the max, but still very high. You have good accuracy. AP is virtually never matters, very rarely matters, but in the event it matters, you have good AP to one shot most of the few things that wouldn't get one shot by 20 AP. AIM-7Fs, most of the time irrelevant, but every now and then it's a nice bonus that you pay like 5 or 10 points for. It doesn't really matter, but you might as well. That's it. The fact that it comes at 2 per card is relatively consistent, is fast. The only thing that's lacking is stealth. If it had stealth and still came at 2 per card, even if it was like 10-15 points more expensive, would be a significant buff. Not that I'm asking for it, but BAZ is a pretty decent 100-point ASF, but how does it compare to the other 100-point ones? I think I replaced the Mirage F1000 F1C200 in S tier. How does it compare? Both of them come on Elite, so that's all good. So BAZ has twice the missiles on both. I'm gonna put this away, hopefully I don't forget. Twice the missiles, of course. Both missiles also have 10% lower accuracy. Long range one 700 meters, have 700 meter more range. Medium range ones have less range. One of the main advantages is that if one either hit, or like one of either hit, it's 4 plus 6 is obviously 10, not the case for the Mirage. So that is a really nice bonus. If we take the accuracy into account, or like the veterancy, the effective accuracy on a Mirage is 73% on both, of course. For the BAZ, it's 61, so that's a whopping 12% lower accuracy, as opposed to just 10. Time on target is really nice on the BAZ. Speed is not that relevant. That's not a very big difference. But I think the fact that you have 4 plus 6 is something that's not to be underestimated. The twin Devas are, of course, also a Vulcan, essentially, rate of fire wise. But it is only 100 points as well. And it comes at 30% ECM, just like the Mirage. I think it's probably a bit worse, but I think the fact that the missiles have 4 plus 6 HE respectively is quite good. And compared to something like the Jack MiG-23ML, which I tend to really like, it does have that 30% ECM. And at 100 points, that's really, really good. BAZ Meshupar, probably the worst like high-end ASF in the game, simply because it only has 40% ECM. Every other one at Elite ASF has 50%. Of course, it does have those derbies, which are pretty derby, which has 700 meter less range compared to like the other high-end medium range fire and forget missiles, right? The AIM-120 and the R-77s. But of course, that 10% extra ECM, which in reality on Elite leads to you having 91% accuracy, as opposed to 83% on 60% base accuracy missiles, which means you quote-unquote only get 8% additional accuracy on Elite, which, trust me, please to use this on Elite. It's fine, right? But worse than all the other 1 per card ASFs. But I think it's still okay. Kurnass is easy S tier. I think, honestly, in my eyes, the strongest ground support plane in the game. You could argue for like 25T and A10, of course, getting a lot of value, but I think the Kurnass, just due to how versatile it is just, here's the thing, it is basically useful against literally any ground target in the game, right? Be it infantry, be it tanks, to a certain extent AA, but this different story, right? Blind bombing, etc. So good. The Nighthawk, of course, has the same payload, but the Nighthawk is only at 1 per card. And as ridiculous as the stealth on it is, sometimes you prefer the 30% ECM and the higher speed as opposed to stealth. If both of them came in at 2 per card, I'd probably rate the Nighthawk higher, but given that the Kurnass is 2 per card, I think the Kurnass takes the cake for me. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's I think the only 50% ECM plane that, oh no, the Barak II, one of the two 50% ECM planes that you do get here. There we go, Kurnass and ST, of course. That you have, the payload is the same as the Harrier GR7, but the Harrier GR7 comes at trained on elite as opposed to rookie and veteran, which is not to be underestimated. I think the laser guided bombs have the base accuracy of 50% ECM. There is of course range scaling, which is definitely a thing, i.e., you know, the closer you get to the target, the more accurate you become, given the fact that they come out with a 1 second interval one after the other. So the last couple of, you know, LGBs are more accurate than the first one. Progressively more accurate, of course. I think it's honestly, it's not too bad. The reason why you just don't see it is because you don't need any other laser guided bomb plane when you have the Kurnass. If you want like bomber or anti-tank plane, the Lavi or the base Barak just do a better job. It's an okay plane, but it's just relatively expensive and it's just inconsistent. It can do quite a lot of damage, but it's not nearly as versatile. And for 150 points, you want something that can get a lot of value more quickly. The RAM just can't get like a lot of value. Sure, you might get like a super heavy sniper or something, but it's not that consistent for it. And you know, yeah, Lavi is honestly a great bomber. 10-15 HE bombs is a good payload. You have good ECM, you're fast. We have some, you know, essentially AIM-9Ls. Not a Vulcan gun, but it's fine. It's just a good bomber. Once again, why don't you see? Well, you have the Kurnass and you have strong artillery, so you don't really need another bomber. It is 2 per card. Yeah. Honestly, 8 here. But I think in this case, coloring it in blue is warranted. The Netz. Love the Netz. I do love me some Netz now. Isn't there like an ice hockey team or something called the Netz? And there's like this meme, love the Netz. Anyway, how does this compare to the F-1CT? The F-1CT is 40% ECM, but I think a similar payload, doesn't it? Yep, same bombs, slightly better short-range missiles, worse gun, not that relevant. Like I said, 10% extra ACM for 10 points and like slightly better missiles. Definitely a good trade-off, given the fact, you know, how much they cost and they have the same availability. Same thing as always. So just, you know, again, similarly to the F-1CT, the payload is fine. Yeah, Jesus. Payload is like not too bad, but it's just for the price and the availability you get, you're just better off using something like a Kurnass. Is the Mirage in the B tier? I actually put it in C tier, huh? Okay. Barak. Just, you know, if the OCU was a step lower below the MLU, like a slightly worse version than the MLU, the Barak is not a step lower. For 10 points less, you lose 10% ECM, and instead of AIM-120s, you get 2 Python 3s. Again, not an amazing trade-off, but still, even though you lose 10% ECM, still a good anti-tank plane. Just having 4 26 AP missiles at 2 per card for a pretty affordable price is just nice to have. And honestly, I think there is an argument to be made that those Python 3s, or essentially AIM-9Ls, might on average be more useful than the 2 AIM-120s, because then you at least have a relatively decent and like somewhat capable Helo Hunter, whereas with the OCU, you can't really deny enemy planes, you know? Although the OCU might be like really useful to support your AA net against bombers. But honestly, still a pretty good anti-tank plane. Barak II, amazing ASF. This is essentially a Yak 141. Common low veterancy. You have the derbies instead of, you know, AIM-120s, which would be R77 clones. You have 50% ECM, and you have the Vulcan. So the Yak 141, of course, comes on veteran. which with both its missiles having 60% accuracy, that leads to 76% base accuracy. The Barak II comes on, so yeah, on hardened, not veteran. The Yak 141 is veteran, this one is hardened. I'm not sure if I slipped up there earlier. The 60% now, of course, isn't 76 anymore, it's 70. But those 70% translate to 80% effective accuracy. So your long medium range missiles, have 4% more accuracy. Your short range ones 6% less, which is honestly a good trade. Even if you lose 700 meter range, I think it's a very good trade because their accuracy matters more than their accuracy. Because if you double tap with these, so you never have to hit with these anyway. And of course you have 10% extra ACM, which in a head-on fight matters, but also, not getting killed by enemy AA is really, really helpful. And having like a really, really good gun can sometimes matter as well. Shahak, that's an interesting one. It's actually pretty good. You're fast. You have 10% ACM for 50 points, which not all have. 2 SRAMs, which is honestly good, like fine, good enough. Essentially a Vulcan. And I think this is a 5 on rookie. Yeah, I think it's just perfectly fine. Compared to the L12 that has no ECM, also for 50 points. And I'm also gonna put this in B tier. I think the Shahak is one of the best 50 points planes you can have, right? Let's actually compare this. It's actually a relatively interesting one. Those planes tend to not be too impactful. But okay, let's compare the Shahak to, I mentioned the L12. For the same price, your missiles are identical. You have the Twin Defa, you have an NR30, which I think is that the one that has actually higher rate of fire than the Vulcan. Is it the same thing as a Q5D? I don't think it is. I think it's a different one. You're a bit faster, but it's not that big of a deal. The Shahak actually has a pretty good turn radius, which might matter. If you actually want to really kill a heal hunter, that kind of matters. You have the 10% ACM, which is really nice. So basically in all aspects better. The lower speed, not that relevant. If you compare it to those cheap J7s. So for the 45.1, of course, your missiles significantly better. You have that ECM, you have the Twin Defa. I think this might also be really good, but you have 40% base accuracy, and given that the range against helicopters is the same, once again, really nice. And the guns do matter on these cheap planes. Compared to the 60.1, you have only 2 missiles, which, like I said, honestly not that big of a deal. Also 10% ECM, but still only 20% accuracy on those. Yeah, I think out of all those, like, these really cheap planes, the Shahak, clearly the best. Clearly the best. The Nesher A, just a solid rocket propelled plane. You're fast, affordable. We have some ECM. It's basically the same story. I don't think I need to talk too much about rocket propelled planes anymore. The Kfir C.2, Napalm. You are only 2 per card. You're relatively expensive, but you have some ECM, and the payload isn't too bad. Honestly, I'm willing to put you in C tier. I have to actually there. And last but not least, Kfir C.7. Once again, never really see this because kernel success, and if you really want a bomber, you're better off with the Lavi. It is cheaper. It is still very fast, but does only have 20% ECM and 2 per card. 23 HE is not insignificant step up compared to 20 HE, but you are only 2 per card. And with this lack of survivability compared to the other options, and lack of payload compared to the other options, yeah, it's fine. It's just if you want like spam bombers, sure, it's a fine bomber, right? B tier for sure. Yeah, nothing else to say in that regard really. And that's actually gonna end it. Those are all the planes. I'm pretty sure I did not forget any planes. Let me actually check. we definitely did USA first. With the, I remember tornadoes, I remember the mirages, KWS I talked about, Voodoos I talked about Cluster Bomber, this Cluster Bomber, Fighting Falcon. I talked about the F-111C, talked about the F-1 for sure. We did these two earlier. We did the Lazur. I'm just checking if there's any plane of any of the nations I did by you know, so I know that okay, we did the whole nation, because I always did the whole nation. We definitely did the 25T. I remember the Napalm plane, the SE7. I remember the Finnish MiG. I remember the, you know, Gallop. I remember the MiG-29 bomber, and especially like the rant about how garbage this is. Remember all those J7s that I didn't care anymore, and I definitely do remember talking about the B5 survivability. So we did the excuse me, sorry. We did all the nations so far. When it comes to all the relevant tabs, I'm sorry, Naval, but we will do naval. We will do naval. Don't you worry. And yeah. Short episode this time. And yeah, see you next week for naval. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. And I'll hopefully see you next time. Later.